of how Nigerian parents are now groaning under the heavy weight of high school fees, tuition fees, in Nigeria, and that actually galvanized us to bring this topic to you this morning. We're looking at the rising cost of education in Nigeria, especially, if you want to actually make your children acquire education in private institutions, not only at the university level, but also at polytechnic, college of education, and secondary and primary school levels. Why is this? So why is it that public schools are not attractive anymore? And why is it that people, even with the high cost of school fees, decide to take their kids to private schools? This is why we brought to you an experienced educationist on the program this morning. We have another guest joining us in the course of the program, but for now, we have Babatunde, Elder Babatunde Kuku, as our first guest in the studio this morning. Good morning, Elder.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As an educationist of years of experience, does this, as not just an educationist, as a parent too, does this in any way disturb you, the rising cost of education in Nigeria?
Well, it does. As a parent and as an actor in the industry, it does a lot. And there are so many factors that we can really say is bringing the cost of educating our child in an average Nigerian school. There are so many factors that is bringing the cost high. One of the major, let's be frank with each other, the rising cost of education is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. Even in the so-called first world, where they have everything on ground for any business to take off, the cost is still going on higher and higher on a daily basis. Those countries have gotten an enabling environment for any business to take off. The atmosphere is conducive. The economic is being managed very well. Despite that, the cost of educating an average American child is going up on a daily basis.
Is it on the same scale? If you look at
it is not. It is not. It is not. Yeah. But the reverse is the case in the developing nations. Why? Those things that ought to be on ground are not there. What I meant with that is the facilities are not there. There are no good roads, no water, no electricity, and all these things definitely will increase the cost of any entrepreneur going to a particular business. Now, another thing is the falling economy, the hyperinflation. What you get for 5,000 10 years ago, 500 naira, almost 50,000 cannot get it now. And all these things, when put together, we go back. We make the cost of running that business to be high. And invariably, the high cost will have to go back on the parents that want that particular service.
And on the schools too.
And on the schools.
Especially private schools.
Especially private schools. There's a way. The private school will make sure that they make their own money. The cost is high. They have done everything possible to provide the service. If you can afford the price we are attaching to that service, no problem.
Okay, well, no problem. If you can afford the price you're attaching to the services, no problem. We'll take this break, and then when we return shortly, we'll continue with the program. Stay with us.
dára púpọ̀, ẹ̀kọ́ ló láyé ṣàwà yìí fẹ́. Ẹ̀kọ́ dára púpọ̀, ẹ̀kọ́ ló láyé ṣàwà yìí fẹ́. Ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní ìdẹ́ni rírẹ́, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní ìdẹ́pọ̀ ọ̀la. Ẹ̀dá kò yé ẹni òbí wa, mẹ́ta lówó kẹsọ̀kọ̀ tọ́ wa. Ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní ìdẹ́ni rírẹ́, ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní ìdẹ́pọ̀ ọ̀la. Ẹ̀dá kò yé ẹni òbí wa, mẹ́ta lówó kẹsọ̀kọ̀ tọ́ wa. Ẹ̀dá kò yé ẹni òbí wa, mẹ́ta lówó kẹsọ̀kọ̀ tọ́ wa. Kò bá ẹ̀kọ́, ó dáni lójú pé yóò ti yá. Iṣẹ́ burúkú ni wọ́n ń ṣe tí wọ́n bá jalè lọ́wọ́.
Okay, we're also joined by a public analyst on the program this morning, Mr. Ayade Shorunke. Good morning, Mr. Shorunke.
Good morning.
Good to see you this year.
It's a pleasure.
Happy New Year to you.
Same
Before you came in, Elder Kuku has actually said a few things about why education is, the cost of education is on the rise in Nigeria. He's actually linked that to a whole lot of factors. If the economy is not sound, if social amenities are not readily available, naturally those things will have effect on those that are setting up schools. And I think what we're trying to actually compare is that why is it that public schools are far cheaper than private schools, are not still attractive, even with the for instance, I know parents pay less than like 10,000 naira to actually enroll their children in secondary schools almost everywhere in Nigeria. But then parents still don't find those schools attractive. They still go for private schools that are expensive, But then the cost keeps increasing on a daily basis. I have an experience recently too, that the school fees was actually jacked up by 10,000 naira between one term and another one. And I said, why? So why is this?
Well, let me first of all say that I do not believe that the cost of education as it is today is high. And I will explain what I mean by that. The reason why we look at it as high is because of the average economy of the average Nigerian. The capacity, the purchasing power of an average Nigerian is relatively low this time. It's not that the cost of education is so high. I mean, one of my former mentor, Taisho Larin, will always tell of them that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance.
But look at the gap. You don't also see the gap. For instance, I gave an example the other time. In a public secondary school, in a session, a child is not likely to spend up to 50,000 naira. Meanwhile, in a session in a private school, he or she is likely to spend.
You are looking at the gap.
Yeah.
But let's look at the structure before we now look at the gap. Right from the time that I have been growing, the government had always seen education, even from the time of Action Group, UPN, the government had always seen education from the perspective of a social service. And rightly, because at that time the focus of Baba Awolowo then was to ensure that every average Southwesterner was educated. Even the older ones who were not educated were encouraged to push their kids to school. There are a lot of people who are adults today and they will tell you that if not for Baba Awolowo, they probably wouldn't have gone to school. So education as ordained was seen as a social service. But as time goes on, as the population keeps increasing, divisioneer is no more, and the people that took over the vision could not carry on. That is my own analysis of it. Because each divisioneer probably have been able to entrench the proper structures to ensure the sustainability of that vision of social education. Probably those that came after him will have been able to carry on. And it's not that the government really cannot fund education. But when you begin to bring in options, at the time that there was a time that there was no private school.
Well,
in the nation. There was a time there was
let's look at Abeokuta, for instance.
No, there was a time that there was none. After some time, they began to have private school. When the free education of Awolowo started, I can't remember any private school. There is none of those private schools that will tell you that they started around 1960. I don't know any private schools.
Definitely,
very few.
I don't know any. Maybe there were, but I don't know any. So around that time, private school education was really not the norm. Awolowo funded. I even as at early 80s when I got into primary school, I still had some of those books that were given to us free of charge. Today, you get to some of these schools, even the governments will tell you that they are providing free education, but the books are not there. And to make the matter worse, even parents, we as a people have come to appreciate the fact that, education is a social service. Even when we send our kids to school, whenever there is maybe PTA asks us to pay 5,000, you see parents shouting, why should we pay 5,000? The reality is that the government, as of today, cannot fund education.
Elder Queer.
Elder Kuku.
Beg your pardon, sorry about that, Elder Kuku. Most parents are moving their kids, their children, their wards to private schools, private institutions. Does that mean that the private ones are given the best compared to the public schools?
Not quite. As he has said, it's not that the government schools are not good. They have the best of teachers. But as he also has said that government sees education as a social service. It's a way of redistributing wealth. That from those that have, let's take some and give to those that did not have. That is the spirit behind free education, free this and free that. When parents, he says the public schools are no more attractive. Why are they no more attractive? It's because the government, the funding is no more there as it was in the Western region. The population had skyrocketed, and the government, any policy that is not that sincere, this is the kind of problem we have at hand. They know that the population is skyrocketing. They know that there is the funding is not actually there. I don't understand. And they still want to do free education. The infrastructures are not there. So, where there are no infrastructure, they know that the capacity of the classrooms they have can only contain 50, and they are putting 120 there. So how do you expect me to go to such school, even if they have one of the best teachers, highly qualified teachers? The infrastructures are not there, the classrooms are not enough, there is no lab, but they will tell you, they will come out to tell you all these things are there. But when you get there, physically, you see children sitting on the window, some of them sitting on the floor. They said they have given them books, those books are not there. So the funding are actually not there, and these are the things that is making the public schools these days not to be attractive.
But then we can't. I think the coming of private schools should actually be faulted, because
should be faulted.
Shouldn't be faulted.
It shouldn't be faulted at all.
As an educationist like you, I remember in the 80s too, just a few secondary schools came in Abeokuta.
Yes.
We had Trinity, St. Benedict, Children's House School, and all that. They came to complement
government efforts. Yes.
But now they have taken over totally, isn't it? For you as an experienced educator?
Yes. We cannot say they have taken over totally, but because they have the funding, their own school seems to be attractive, even if it's coming out at a very high cost. They will go to any length to source for fund and do the needful.
But those who teach in private school, you said, are not particularly better than those who teach in public schools. That's what you said.
I said the government school have one of the crop of best of teachers. It's not that the teachers are not there. It's the funding and the infrastructure. So, but in the private school, the teachers are there, the funding is there, the infrastructure is there, and it makes it to be more attractive.
Okay, so it's all complete in private.
Can I come in? It's not that it's complete in private school. In fact, I will tell you that most of these private schools are just a little better than the public schools. I mean, I have my kids in the private school, and I kind of look at what they dish out at times, and I've seen situations whereby I question even the teachers about some of the things that they teach the kids. I mean, I've seen a situation whereby a teacher marked something that is wrong as correct. She understand. So I think if you look at it in terms of quality, there was even a time I was in a PTA meeting and the proprietress was trying to rubbish my primary school. Probably she didn't know that somebody from that primary school is a parent. She was trying to rubbish my child. Our school is not like so school. And I was like, come on, I attended that school. The quality I got when I attended that school is not the quality my kids are getting, even from your private school. But you know, I can't go confrontational. But within me, that was what I was saying to myself.
But then, that was it.
That's what I'm saying.
When you were in that school,
not now. Not now.
So what has changed?
A lot of things have changed. We have mentioned the issue of funding. The issue of regulation is also a challenge. Regulation of some of these schools. In those days, the inspectorate of the Ministry of Education is top-notch. Even with these private schools that we're talking about. The current private schools, in fact, you will see situations whereby they will approve textbooks that have errors. That was not happening in those days. Even for the private schools. And we know how all these things goes on. Patronage at the ministry, you just go. In those days, there is serious scrutiny of the textbooks. You submit it, they will do serious scrutiny. There is a particular department in the ministry that goes through all those textbooks. So you cannot just approve any textbooks. So when you are looking at some of those things, it's not just the area of funding. Many of these private schools, how is the ministry regulating them? Is it not paddy kind of a thing? The ministry is supposed to monitor them. Some of these private schools, if you even look at their fees, you look at the quality of teaching that they give, you begin to ask yourself, is it really value for money? These are the things that the inspectorate division of the ministry...
And there are even levels of private schools.
There are levels of private schools. You go to some private schools, there is no facility for playground. And in those days, those were key in education.
Yes.
Because these are things that even kind of broaden your mind, help you in your brain development. It's not just opening the books and reading the books or sitting down in classrooms. You go out, you relate. It's also part of the developmental process.
Well, in all of this, let's talk about the commitment of teachers, because I believe that is also very important when we're talking about education system. When compared to the public, compared to that of the private, you will see most of teachers in public schools, they actually go there to trade. I'm sorry to say. But that you can get in the private schools. What do you say to that?
You are very right. An entrepreneur or a sole proprietor will make sure he gets something out of his investment. So all these things that you are saying, they will not allow it. The supervision is strict. The discipline among those teachers is strict. There are times you should enter, there are times you should leave. People are monitoring whether they attend classes. So there will not be time for that. Though we may have some scapegoats who will do it at the back of the proprietor. But in the public schools, is the monitoring there? Are they happy with what they are doing? let's say the supervision is there from the Inspectorate Department of the Ministry of Education, but within the four walls of the school, what about the supervision, the monitoring, who is doing this, who is doing that? And another thing is this, the pupils, how do they relate with the students? It's getting so bad these days that a teacher cannot correct a student. They will just go there, make sure those who really still want to do the work, enter the class, dish whatever they want to dish, and go. But
who should be blamed for that? Who should be blamed for that?
It is the government and the parents. See the corrective measure the Ministry of Education is taking these days. Ogtv has taken over nearly all the schools, including some private schools. Who should we blame? It is the society and the parents. As immediately the parent fails at home, it bounces back on the society. And that's exactly what we are seeing now. When the teacher cannot say, sit down there, the next thing you see, the pupil slapping the teacher. How do you want that teacher to be highly committed to duty? How do you want that teacher to say, come, I've taught you, let me see, let me look at what you have written down. Okay, let's look at the infrastructures. You're telling me, how will the teacher who hardly finds space to enter the classroom, to the chalkboard, how will it render his service?
Talking about that, maybe we should look at the role technology is playing in the hike now. You know, when you compare the private to public, to the public schools.
Technology is also something that is capital intensive. Even the private schools that we're talking about, how many private schools can actually afford
ICT
to invest in technology? Yes, some that maybe high-paying schools are investing. But let me try and just add to what he has said. Beyond what he has said, the issue of motivation is key, the reward system. Whether in the public or in the private, if you look at the public schools, what is the motivation for the teacher? You cannot discipline the students. At times, you might not even find the principal in school. I have, when I was as far back as 2002, when I was serving in Bayelsa State, there is a particular school in that state that when you get there, you will never get, out of about 96 teachers, you never get up to 12 of them in school at once. But the only thing that you will see is that you see a lot of core members, and that is why states like that will never allow NYSC to be scrapped, because their workforce, their civil servants are really being replaced by the corpus as workforce.
What happens in public schools too?
No, it does. The school I'm talking about is a public school.
Private?
No, it happens in private schools.
It happens in private.
So when you look at that kind of a situation, the motivation and the reward system. You're saying that some of them they will engage in trade and the rest. It's like trying to keep themselves busy. If you are very busy in the public school, like our teachers were, in those days our teachers monitor even our psychological development. Yes. They look at, which student is not at speed with the others. What do we do? What additional effort do we put to bring him up? In those days, even in private schools, you don't get it today. They just come to class and they teach everybody and they believe everybody is okay. When you now look at the private school, as it were, how much is their pay? No matter what the fee is, how many of the private schools are actually paying the living wage?
Gentlemen, let me take you. We are actually, let's take the school out of primary secondary education. Let's take it to the university, tertiary education level, because we seem not to be really talking about that, enough. I remember in those days, in my years in Ogun State University, I actually graduated from Ogun State University, and I used to be this lecture room that's called 101. I'm sure most of you will remember 101 at Abusi Dumari. You know, that's as far back as 1990, between 1991 and 1995. And you have to sit outside sometimes.
Yes.
To receive lecture.
Yes.
Then, I think, was that the start of the erosion of values and standards in tertiary institutions, and that actually made people to start setting up private universities, private polytechnics, and colleges of education?
I think we started getting it wrong in tertiary education in the days of our Maradona, President Babangida. It was a time whereby the university dons and professors were ridiculed. And some of them felt, oh, if my nation does not appreciate me, let me find better schools out there. And many of we got a brain drain from our universities. Our best professors, our best academicians left the country, and we're not left with what I can call the second class. Very few of the brilliant ones stayed behind. And you know, in the university system, there is also a area of patronage and democracy involved. When the majority are in the class of the mediocres and in the less, definitely the person that comes top heading the university will be from that class. And at the end of the day, we started getting people whose administrative capacity in some of our universities started coming down. After some time, the funding also started going down, and it became worse. And the days before Babangida, a university VC controls its community with very little interference from government. But that does not happen today. So you cannot expect such a structural manipulation or structural failure to give us the best that we were getting there.
What role did or has incessant strike played? You know, because I remember too, I was supposed to graduate in 95. I graduated in 97.
The incessant strike, to me, is a fallout. In those days, what we used to hear is student unrest, not strike, not lecturers unrest. In those days, it was students unrest, whereby the SUG will come up and they are protesting against a government policy, against a university policy, but not really the lecturers coming out to say they are striking. So the decadence that came began, initially it was affecting the students, but it got to a stage that it now began to affect the lecturers. The lecturer that is supposed to handle maybe 40 students now finds himself handling 400 students. And he had no choice than to handle them. The universities at a point started on financial drive, and they were admitting students that they really could not cater for.
Was that enough for people now to start going to enrolling their kids in private schools? Because even these days, Nigerians go out, you know, they go to countries like Benin Republic to educate their children. In Ghana, you know, yes, we can say we are almost at the same level with Ghana intellectually, but with Benin Republic, isn't that?
If I may answer your question, it's more than enough. You see, we need things that will complement government. The tertiary university being established by private organizations, they are to complement government. Government had failed in some areas. There are no more facilities there. The population is going up, as we have in the public secondary schools. The same thing is happening at the tertiary level. With this happening, can you take your child or can you send your child to such tertiary school? And if you have the ability to pay, the next thing is to look for an alternative. Where I remember in those days at our University of Ibadan, we are only 3 in a room. When you get there these days, maybe about 9 of them are in a room.
Is that not expected? The population keeps increasing on a yearly basis.
The population keeps increasing. The schools are not enough. Even the ones we have, the infrastructures are not there.
Now, if you're talking about the complementary roles of the private universities, private polytechnics,
yes,
I don't know. I've also seen that even with the high, because in some private schools you could pay as much as
1 million.
1 million per semester.
I know a school, 800 per semester.
800 per semester.
Yes.
And that depends on the course.
And depends on the course.
It depends on the course.
Compared to a public school where you pay much lesser. Yes. But again, what about the quality of graduates that come out of those private schools? Practically, we've seen experiences of graduates that come out of private universities that don't measure up
with that of the public school.
Even with the high cost of running the schools.
such is expected when there are no supervision. As he said the other time, some of the private schools are not well supervised. Nobody is going there to question them. So they come out with substandard quality. The same thing is happening now at the tertiary level. When you approved, I think it's the federal government that is giving them approval to establish a tertiary institution. When you approve, and the same federal government that give the license is not doing the needful to pursue them that they do the right thing, definitely will not get the right results.
Some people also say, some people are also of the opinion that it's all about business for those private schools. You know, that sometimes too, some University of Ibadan, for instance, or OOU, could say 200 is a cut-off point to read law in my school, for instance.
Yes.
I go to some of these private universities,
And
they take less. They take less.
Yes, because it's business.
Because it's business.
Yes.
So is that complementing government?
It does.
Rightly.
It does. It does really. Let me tell you. Let me put this way. For example, now about 5,000 students went to OAU to do postgrad, and they only have facilities for 800. We have 4,200 that particular school cannot take. Where do they go? They will go to a private school, even at a higher cost. They will go to a private school. Even those private schools, do you know another problem is the supervising ministry at the federal level gives them number that if you don't get this amount of number in your school, we close down your school. I'm a CSC man. There was a time they said we are not admitting as much as they wanted. So if you don't admit to this level, that means you are not fit to run. So those rules that cannot be taken by the federal or state control tertiary institution, we have to go somewhere else.
And I think there's a reality that we also need to come to terms with. We as a society tend to believe that when a student does not meet up a cutoff, it means it's not fit for that course.
Yes.
That might be a very wrong notion. We have a situation in this country whereby the students that go outside the country for their tertiary education are the ones that could not get admission within. But they go out there and they come back and become the best of our workforce. Why? Because they have a platform there that picks them up from their low educational class and they're able to build them and still make them good for the society.
We don't have
so
that
it means that if we structure our education in a way, even some of these private schools, those that you think will not meet up with the cutoff of the public schools, these private schools can be structured in a way to help them and they will still become very good products in the society.
But one thing I noticed is the fact that even in the high rate of first-class graduates, you said the other time that the pay higher doesn't mean they churn out the best. But the results, the private institutions, they have more of first-class graduates than the public institutions. But when they get to the labor market, when we talk about the contributions, it is quite low. Nothing to write home about.
The private institutions, many of them really work on attracting professors and lecturers even from these public institutions when they're on sabbatical.
Yes.
I've seen situations like that. If you go to some of these private schools, at times even up to 50% of their lecturers are actually from many of these private schools coming there on sabbatical. But when you talk of training up a child or training up a student, a lecturer can pick up a student right from 100 level and follows that student up to graduation. I had a lecturer taking me right from my day one in school, and it took me various courses, but we had this interpersonal relationship that kind of rubbed off on my educational development. You really cannot get that in many of these private schools. And the reality is that we also have a society that is certificate crazy. People want to invite you for interview based on your class. Oh, first class, second class, upper. So if that is what will attract me for interview, you should expect the universities to want to dish out products that will say, oh, they are first class students, they are first class graduates, but when they get to the labor market, I have conducted an interview, and out of all the people that applied, we could not even get one to appoint.
Anyway, in 3 minutes, we are going to close this interview. Abeokuta, quickly, give us your recipe, solution to this in 1, 2, 3 sentences. How can government actually help to bring down the cost of to reduce the attraction of Nigerians, to private schools and bring them more at home, to public schools?
The only thing is funding. Let them make their schools attractive.
Funding?
Yes, let all the facilities be there, and let them reward their teachers very well.
Just that. What about more schools? You don't also advocate that more schools should be built?
It's still funding.
I mean, look at this axis from Yanomachuari to Jaba. We have 3 public, big
schools. Yes.
Abeokuta Grammar School is almost filled to the brim.
Now,
and one would have expected that government should construct another small school.
The funding is there. Government knows the right thing to do. It's because the funding is no more there. They have access to land where they can build. It's only the funding is not there, and they are not being sincere with the so-called free education. The parents should be brought in to pay a little to assist the government in the funding of the education.
What's your own addition?
I will want to say that we should look at it from a regulatory point of view. When I say regulatory, not just the government should get the whole students involved, should get the parents involved, not just the government inspectorate. Let's have a structure within the PTA, within the old students that can come into the school and be like whistleblowers. I mean, in my own former school, Mayflower School, I know what the old students are doing. You just mentioned Abeokuta Grammar School. I know what the old students are doing in complementing the effort of the government. There are schools outside the country whereby, they provide kind of loan to their students, and those students now pay back to give back to the school. Yes. So we should be able to develop such a culture in our old students whereby they give back to the school, complement government's effort, and provide the required environment for the students.
Anyway,
before you thank our guest, let's quickly talk about the effect of all this on the youth.
The implication is so bad. You see, one is that it will create a wide gap between the children of the rich and that of the poor. Two, it will, it might increase the literacy level.
Illiteracy level?
Yes. You see, when many of them cannot acquire education, education is the best thing that a government can give to a society. When you open the gate of a school, you are indirectly closing that of a prison. It will reform, reshape, remodel a person to be useful for that society. And when all those ones are lacking, what do you get?
Anyway, I'd like us to close this interview by, I had an experience recently. I was at a program of Government College in Badon, and the old student, the president of the old student of Asujamdra School actually said the school had committed like 2 billion naira to that school. And at that occasion, we had former president Olusegun Obasanjo, who actually jokingly said, if you have committed like 2 billion naira to that school, then government should hands off. That government cannot even. Government cannot even.
To do anything.
Anyway, put as much as that amount of money in that school.
The truth is that if some of these schools are even handed over to the old students, they will perform better.
They will perform better than the government.
Anyway, we want to thank you so much for coming. Babatunde Kuku, educationist, seasoned educationist, thank you so much for joining us on this program.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Yadi Shorunka, public analyst, thank you so much. Happy New Year once more. First time we're seeing each other in the new year. Okay, we'll come back shortly, and when we return, it will be time for us to discuss the new chieftaincy law in Ogun State, and we have joining us the Commissioner for local government and chief testing affairs in the state. That will be doing that for the next 45 minutes. Stay with us, don't go anywhere.